few weeks ago, right between Christmas and New Year's, we talked about 5 questions you should ask yourself at the end of the year and kind of reflecting on last year. And one of those questions was, where are you the bottleneck? Well, today we're going to talk about how you can build a leadership system that transforms you from being the bottleneck into not being the bottleneck. Hello, and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. So as I mentioned, today we are jumping all into a leadership system, a framework that helps you transform yourself from being indispensable in your bar to being a strategic owner that has a management team that can run things without having to be at the bar so that you can actually focus on your business rather than working in your business. And we are going to lay the groundwork that you need. We're going to identify the pain points, and then we're going to really jump in to talking about a structured system where you can get through this in about 90 days and transform your management style and your team's management style to ensure that if you've found some place where you are the bottleneck, you have a way out of that and you can fix it. So the first thing I want to talk about is, why do bar owners fail at leadership development? And this is not to point fingers at anyone. This is industry-wide. And quite frankly, some of this stuff is things that when I was an owner, I fell into the same traps. So the first thing I want to talk about here is, what is the big owner trap? And the big trap that most of us fall into is, we're good at what we do. Maybe you're a great bartender and great at making cocktails. Maybe you know how to cook really well. Maybe you're very good at the administrative tasks. Maybe you're a whiz when it comes to lean management and business optimization. But quite frequently, regardless of where it is that you're really good in your business, we fall in this trap where I'm good at this, so I don't have to teach anybody to do it. It's just what I do. Well, when you're really good at something and you don't teach anybody how to do it, guess what? You're just going to keep doing it yourself forever. And that can create a bottleneck, especially as an owner when we're busy. Not having anyone else that can do some of the things that we do often leads to inefficiencies in our own businesses. And along those lines, we need to consider, what is the cost of being the bottleneck when we create these inefficiencies? Well, we can't scale beyond one location because you're the only person that can handle X, Y, and Z tasks. It makes it really hard as an owner to take time off because, well, you leave, what happens with your business? I mean, it's the middle of winter. I live in the Midwest. I think it's like 20 degrees outside. I would much rather be in Florida. And trust me, when I own bars, there were times where I'm thinking, oh God, I'd love to get out of here and just go someplace warm for a little bit. But if I'm the person that's doing a whole bunch of essential work and no one else is trained to do it, I can't leave. I'm stuck. The other downside, and this is one we don't think about as much, is you may lose great employees because there's no advancement path. They're not learning. They're not developing. And so they're going to go somewhere where they can learn and develop. But the bottom line here is that bar owners without a management bench are going to work about 30% more hours than bar owners with trained leaders. And so leadership development, when we look at it that way and talk about how it affects your life as an owner, this is not a cost. It's a profit and lifestyle multiplier. It helps you amplify your own lifestyle. It gives you a better life. It gives your family a better quality of life. So it's going to help you on the money side, but let's not even worry about that for a second. A good leadership development system, the biggest benefit as a bar owner you get out of a good leadership development system is quality of life for you and your family. It makes your life better. So if you don't have anybody currently in management, how are you going to go about identifying high potential leaders, people that you might be able to train up? And one of the things that we want to avoid when we're talking about who do we want to train up, and this is a bear trap that most of us stick our hands in, is we go, well, who's my best bartender? Who's my best person in the kitchen? They should be able to be the best manager. Well, that's not necessarily true. First of all, we're not sure that person even wants to be in management. When I had my bar, first bar I bought, I got about 3 months into it and I realized, hey, I can't do this alone. I need a manager. And so I went to all my bartenders and said, if you want to manage, you're more than welcome to apply for the position. None of them wanted to. Why? Because quite frankly, it was more hours for about the same amount of money, if not less money than what they were already making. So why would they do that? That's a bad deal. So not all the time are your top bartenders who are making great money, working not that many hours, they're not always going to want to be managers. Some do, some don't. So we want to look at everyone on our team. We want to look outside our team, right? Sometimes the best management hire is an external hire. But here are the 5 things, regardless of where you're looking for a manager and where that person comes from. Here are the 5 things I would make sure that your candidates for leadership always meet. The first one is they need to be reliable. They need to show up on time, perform consistently, and not create drama. And I think that last part's a big one, not create drama. We know in this business, there are a lot of folks that are they create a lot of drama. I mean, I think every bar has multiple people, both on the team and guests, who just like to come in and stir the pot. So we want to find people that don't create drama, and that's part of being reliable, along with consistent performance and showing up on time. We want to find people that have problem-solving skills. When we're looking at current employees, these are people that come to us not with a problem, but with a problem solution set, right? They go, hey, I have this problem. I think we could do this and it would make it better. Not just, hey, I have this problem. Hey, I have that problem. Identification of problems is one thing, but when you see somebody taking the steps to actually come to you with real solutions, that's even better. We want people that are respectful, right? And that their peers respect. So when we're looking at internal hires, are these people assholes to the rest of your team or not? I mean, if they're assholes to the rest of your team, I'm not sure exactly why they're working for you. Sometimes that's how that works, and it's actually a good thing. But generally speaking, we want people that respect the team and that the team respects. Who do you see your current team members turning to for advice or information or sales tips? Those people are people you want to look at for potentially management. The fourth thing I look for anytime I'm talking about hiring a manager is business mindset. Do these people think about cost? Do they think about waste? Do they think about customer experience without you having to poke them on all of these points consistently? It's the mindset piece of it cannot be overstated, because I can take somebody with a great mindset who really wants to work hard and solve problems and understands looking at costs and waste and customer experience and wants to be hospitable and to give people a great time. I don't care if that person used to shine shoes. I don't care if that person used to be a golf caddy. I don't care if that person, isn't a lawyer. I'm not sure why a lawyer would want to be a restaurant manager, but hey, I've seen it happen before. But if you get the right mindset, you can teach them the skills. Skills, great. Mindset, non-negotiable, because I can teach skills. I cannot teach mindset as easily. And then the final thing we want to look for in anybody that we're looking and bringing into management is, are they coachable? And you'll know this with your current employees. Do they take feedback well? Do they implement changes that you suggest? Are they growing? Right? You don't want to promote somebody to management that doesn't take feedback well and is pretty much stagnant in their growth patterns. And so one of the things that we can do when we're looking at internal folks is, and I really like to do this, establish some different levels of manager or manager training where maybe they get a key or something like that as a sign, or they can run some shifts. But you can actually take, say you need one manager, you could take 2 or 3 people on your team, train them all to be leaders, and then from the best of those 3, pick someone to be a manager. You can actually do this over time. The other thing you can do when you're hiring internally is throw this out to your team, let it sit for a couple weeks, watch them, observe them, come up with a checklist or a scoring system to evaluate them on the metrics we just talked about. The coachability, the business mindset, the peer respect, the problem solving, and the reliability. And then we can use that checklist, that scoring sheet, to kind of really understand, hey, who's going to be best for this position? If we do that score sheet, we want to rate every one of our candidates 1 to 4 on the criteria, with an average of 4 or higher required to enter into that leadership track. And we want to talk to our employees while we're doing this about, hey, we want to develop you into a leader. We want to give you more tools. We want to teach you leadership. We want to teach you how the business works. But we want to do all that without overpromising. That's a big trap we can fall into, where we say, hey, yeah, I'm going to make you GM. Well, I never tell people that. I would much rather say, hey, I want to put you on a leadership track. I want to develop some skills. I want to work with you. I want to see if this is something that is a good fit for you. Train them, teach them, develop them. And if we haven't promised a position at the end, we can give it to them if and when they earn it. It gives you as an owner some control, while at the same time giving your employees the opportunity for growth. So once we've gotten our employees through this, what are we going to train them on? What kind of curriculum do we need to put in place to build leaders? And what I see at a lot of bars, there's really no management training, right? Maybe they follow a manager around. Maybe as the owner, they follow you around. Maybe you poke at some things and you show them some stuff. But that's not really a structured training program. So at bare minimum, and I think you guys have heard me say this before. If you haven't, go back and listen to some of my old episodes on training and things like that, where I say, have a continuous training program, make it a 3-year training program, right? Where you go from basics to very specifics. I really like doing that. But if we're just looking to develop a leadership training program that's short, we want to have a 90-day structured program. That's what I'm looking for when I'm putting people through a leadership program. Now, there's 2 reasons why I like to go 90 days. One is that's enough time for people to actually learn shit. And one of the things that we forget about a lot is that when it comes to management, when it comes to mindset, when it comes to a lot of these heavier topics that aren't how you build a cocktail, there's some mental capacity there. You have to think through things. And a lot of times when we rush training programs, what we do is overload people with information that then they quickly forget. I mean, think about like high school, college, cramming for tests, how little of that you remember, but how much of that you knew for the test. We don't want to do that here. We want to give people time and space to develop and grow and to actually incorporate this within their minds rather than just study it to pass a test and get out. That's why I like doing something like 90 days. The other thing about 90 days is that's going to give us time to really gauge and understand the ability of that team member to work in management. So because it's 90 days, we're going to break this up into 3 phases, right? 3 1-month phases. Pretty simple. Phase 1, operations mastery. So this is when we go beyond bartending or beyond the kitchen, wherever that person normally is. We walk through all the opening and closing procedures with checklist accountability, right? Like, how does every position here open? How does every position close? As a manager, what does your opening and closing look like, right? They should know all of that across every position in your bar. Then we want to get into inventory management, ordering, receiving, storage, counting. How do you handle that? What do you do? Who makes the orders? When are they made? What comes in when? Because it's impossible to be a manager if you don't know what product you have, when it's coming in, and why. Then we want to look at cash handling, bank deposits, right? Do they know how to take the money to the bank? Do they know how to count drawers? Do they know what your daily cash process is? Then P&L literacy, right? Understand the metrics you're tracking, understand how you track them, understand what they need to do. For me, that would always include showing them an actual P&L, saying, hey, here's how we're doing, and here's where we can pull levers, and here's how we pull them. But understand how to read a P&L and all the other financial reporting that you use. The next piece that we want to do in the first phase is safety and compliance. So health code, liquor laws, liability basics, understanding, what is our procedure if somebody has a slip and fall? What is our procedure if a fight breaks out? When should you call the cops? And when is it too early to call the cops? It seems pretty normal that you would think, hey, this is when I should call the cops. But I've noticed 2 things my whole life in bars. People either call the cops before anything happens and then you have a run on your bar that you don't need, or people really don't want the cops to come into their bar, so they wait until someone gets stabbed before they call the cops, which is not what you want either. So make sure they understand, what is our safety and compliance guidelines? When do I do things like call the police? And then we are going to culminate all this with a milestone, right? This is where we're going to, which is where that leader can open or close the bar, preferably both, independently, and complete all the tasks required. So yes, are they going to manage the shift at this point? Not really, but they're going to open and close. They're going to understand a lot about the admin side of the business. Now, weeks 5 to 8, phase 2, we're going to get into more of the management during shift. And so this is the people management fundamentals phase. Phase 2, it's all about these people management fundamentals. And so we're going to go over first staff scheduling. And I love teaching people in leadership staff scheduling because as an owner, that's something you probably do a lot. It's annoying. It sucks. So teach them how to do it. Look at conflict resolution. How do we handle staff disputes without escalation? How do we ensure that things don't go wrong? And along that lines with conflict resolution, what kind of decorum are we expecting out of our team? Where should we step in and where shouldn't we step in correcting them, adjusting their behavior, those sorts of things? Then we want to teach our leaders how to have coaching conversations. How do you correct a performance issue professionally? Is that something you do after the shift? Are you going to do it once a week? Like, what does that look like in your system? Then we want to show them interviewing and hiring. We may not have them actually do the interviewing and hiring process, but we want to make sure they understand how we're doing that, what we're doing, why we're doing things the way we are in our interview and hiring process. And then finally, during phase 2, we want to have them train some new employees or train some old employees if you don't have any new employees, but have them actually conduct some training so that they can master that do or tell, show, do, review training process that we've talked about before and really get their hands wet diving into the training side of things and making sure they understand the full process and assessment of people in your training program, whether or not you have one. You still need to teach them how to train people. And so that's going to round out phase 2. And our milestone at the end of phase 2 is that they can schedule next week's staff and they can do it accurately to your standards within your labor target, et cetera, depending upon how you handle your scheduling. Then the third phase, the final phase, the last month of our training, we want to focus on business leadership. Now, business leadership, this is going to get a little bit outside of some people's comfort zones because now at this point, we're teaching them how to do a lot. But that is so they can be effective leaders and you can go to Florida when it's freaking cold outside. So first thing we want to focus on during phase 3 is financial decision-making, when to adjust prices, cost control, how to make purchases, those sorts of things. Then we want to look at event planning and execution. So how do we handle special events? What does that whole process look like? Customer service recovery. When someone has a bad experience, what are the guidelines we're going to follow? How do we handle complaints? When do we comp? What can we do to build loyalty? What are some tricks that you're using within your bar that your leaders need to know? Then we're going to look at vendor relationships, right? They should meet all the vendors. They should understand the basics of how to negotiate through a liquor sale, right? I mean, when the rep says, oh, I want you to try this cool new thing, how do they react? Make sure you've covered all of that. And then finally, we want to talk about marketing basics. So social media, promotion execution, community engagement, what makes sense when and why, what is your marketing plan? They need to understand that in the more global sense of everything that you're doing. And our big milestone getting out of phase 3 is that this person can manage a full shift, including problem solving and handling complaints, everything without talking to you. Like you could sit in the office and play on your computer all night during the shift and they just come and tell you how great it is. That's kind of what I like to do when I'm looking for a manager to achieve that milestone. Now, training methodology, how are we going to go through this? Well, I like to do a weekly 30-minute one-on-one during this entire process. We want written documentation for every training module. We want to make sure we're doing skills assessments every phase, and we want to develop into that a clear pass-fail criteria, right? If they fail, you repeat the phase. It's kind of harsh, but it's also how we get good results. We want to make sure we're following, I mentioned a second ago, that tell, show, do, review pattern of training. There's a whole podcast episode. You can go back and listen to it on just tell, show, do, review. But we want to make sure that's what we're doing, that we are showing them what to do. We're telling them what to do. They're doing it, and then we're reviewing it. And we want to make sure that we have properly allowed them to shadow us. Now, when I say properly allowed them to shadow us, I mean that we're following all our standards too. So we want to make sure that gets done and that we are following our standards. We are being the best example of who we want them to be as managers. Don't be a hypocrite. Nobody likes a hypocrite. And when we do this, what we're going to find out is that we're going to spend a couple grand, at least, maybe 4 or 5, training this person to get there. But when we do, we're going to, again, open up a lot of quality of life as an owner for you and your family. And we're going to open up a better experience for your team because now they have more upward mobility. They have a good training program. They know what's going on. Now, a few final points I want to touch on before I let you go. The first one is a strategic delegation framework. So one of the things when I talk to owners that they have the hardest time in the world doing is delegating things. And there are a few reasons delegation fails. One of them is you delegate tasks without authority. You say, hey, go do this, but they don't actually have the authority to tell anybody else what to do, so it's never going to happen. There's no outcome. There's no accountability. Another reason delegation fails is because you go tell somebody to do something and then you don't do anything with it. And I will say this from a consulting perspective. I've had this happen to me multiple times over the years. I talk to a client, we come up with a plan, I give them everything they need to do to execute whatever it is that they are doing, and then they just don't execute. So your delegation can fail because you failed to delegate. Your delegation can fail because you delegate, but you don't give somebody the authority to actually do it. But your delegation can also fail because you give someone a task, they complete the task, but then you don't follow up on it and you don't get done what you need to get done to make sure that it happens. Now, during this training period, that's a lot of what happens here. There's a lot more on you as the owner to get these people up to speed. Once they're up to speed, you get better quality of life. So make sure that every time we're delegating with authority to make decisions, accountability for results, and that you're giving the support they need in order to make that delegation work. Now, we can talk a little bit about, I came across this the other day. I thought it was pretty cool. A delegation ladder. So 4 levels of delegation. Level 1, and this is what we're doing in the very entry part of the training. Go do this exactly. Report back to me. Go do this following these 10 steps or 5 steps or whatever it is, and then report back to me. Level 2 delegation. Here's the goal. Come up with a plan to execute it. Check in with me first. So here's what we're trying to accomplish. You tell me how you want to do it. Check in with me. I'm going to approve or tweak your plan and then go do it. Level 3. Here's the goal. Execute. Tell me the result. So rather than checking with us with their plan and then going and executing it and bringing us back the results, in this case, we're saying, here's your task. Just go get it done and then tell me what happened. That's kind of where we want to be around phase 3 of this management training. And then level 4, this is when people are fully functional managers. Here's the area you own. Go do. Right? I'm not going to give you little specific goals. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Like here are your big goals. Go make this thing work. That's our level 4 of delegation. And we want to get as many people up to that level 4 of delegation as we can. Now, again, small bars, we've talked about this before. It's not always possible. But we want to get as much delegation out there, and we want to be willing as owners. We have to have the right mindset too, to be willing to say, okay, here's your area, manage it. And then follow up on the management and coach the management rather than try to handle the nitty gritty. So one of the other things I see a lot with owners is they don't know what to delegate. So how do you determine what to delegate? Well, first thing I want you to delegate is your day-to-day operations, opening, closing, shift management. Second thing I wanted you to delegate, shift scheduling, HR stuff. Maybe not complex HR, maybe not writing employees up or terminations or anything like that. I like to do those as an owner. When I was an owner, I always tried to handle that myself or have my GM handle it. But scheduling, basic HR, you can train folks to do that. Inventory and ordering, get that off your plate. Customer service issues, get that off your plate. Marketing execution is particularly when it comes to social media, get that off your plate. There are 2 things, though, that I'm a lot more reluctant to delegate, which is financial review and analysis and strategic decisions. Financial review and analysis, get a bookkeeper maybe, or get some AI software that's going to give you some good KPI tracking and things like that. Strategic decisions, I think as the owner, though, should pretty much always rest with you. If you do have a really good management team, let them bring you ideas, and then you can tear apart their ideas or build up their ideas, depending upon if it's a good idea or not. But be willing to delegate definitely the day-to-day, the scheduling, the inventory, the customer service, and the marketing, because that's the annoying stuff. The financial review and analysis and the strategic decisions, delegate those to the extent that you feel like delegating them. But those are the 2 things I would always maintain control of as an owner, at least in part, at least an approval step there. Where we really want to get to is where we're at the point where we're checking in with people, not checking up on their performance. We want to review performance against KPIs. We want to look at, monthly, quarterly goal setting and review, not micromanaging and tweaking things day to day. But the reason why I gave you that kind of ladder of delegation earlier, starting with go do this and come back to, hey, you own this, is because we want to move people up that ladder. We want to progress as we can. And let's be honest, part of this is to make sure your team's trained well. Part of this is to make you more comfortable as an owner. Because it can be very, very nerve-wracking handing over control of your business. Now, finally, before I let you go, I want to talk about measuring leadership development success. So what are we actually looking for? What are our quantifiable metrics potentially that we're looking for to track leadership effectiveness? Well, there are 5 things I would say you can look at to determine whether or not you have an effective leadership team in place. Are your weekly hours going down? Like if you start a leadership training program and you don't have leaders and now you do have leaders, your hours should go down. And that's going to look a little bit different from place to place, from owner to owner. but I'd look for trying to get your hours down 25% in the next 90 days. Can you trust the quality of the decisions made by the people that you have trained to be leaders? That takes time. That takes time for you and for them. They have to increase the quality of their decisions. You have to increase your trust. But when you especially are putting someone in a management position, I'd look for, you trust them 90% of the time. They make great decisions. They are great quality after about 6 months. If you have good management, your team turnover should stay the same or improve, not decrease. If you see turnover go way up, right, your retention's going down, you see more people quitting, you're hiring more people, maybe that's a management problem. Good managers, your team turnover is going to stay the same or go down. Financial performance, again, it should stay the same or improve, right? A new manager is not going to make a great change in your financial performance in the short term. But over the long term, we should see it stay the same or improve. And customer satisfaction should also stay the same or improve, right? We want everything getting better, not worse. Now, does a new manager have control of all 5 of these in their entirety? No. Does a new leader have control of all 5 of these in entirety? Definitely not. But what we want to see is there a pattern here? And if we notice a slip in guest satisfaction, or if we notice a slip in turnover, is there another cause for that, or is that manager the root cause when we do our root cause analysis? Further, if we just see one metric drop and the 4 are good, we probably don't have a problem. If we see all 5 metrics drop, you almost definitely have a management problem. So that's how I would gauge whether or not that manager is doing what we want them to do. So just to recap us before I let you go, one of the things we talked about last month, towards the end of the month, was asking some questions of yourself, one of which is, are you the bottleneck in your business? If you are the bottleneck, the only way out of that is to train leaders and to develop them and then to delegate to them. We covered a 4-stage framework to identify our high leaders, train them through a 90-day curriculum with 3 phases, delegate to them, and then to measure with metrics. You can set this up pretty easily, right? I mean, I think I talk fast, so you probably didn't get it all this listen, but listen through this a few times. Take the transcript, run it through ChatGPT. There are a lot of different ways to get information out of this podcast, but from what I've given you, you can pretty much develop this out, and the framework is there. You just have to insert the specifics for your own business. But what you will find is if you go on this process after you've identified where you're the bottleneck and you get rid of those bottlenecks, your ROI is going to be huge here. It may not necessarily be huge in dollar terms, but it will be absolutely transformative in quality of life terms. Now, if you have any trouble with this, if you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out. I am here to help y'all. So just let me know or join Bar Business Nation. There's a bunch of great bar owners in that Facebook group that really help each other and work together to make sure that as a team, as an industry, we can all be successful. That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.